Welcome to Chalk It Out, where we spill the tea on what it's really like to be an educator. Hi, I'm Malorie.
And I'm Greta.
So welcome, I'm Malorie. We are going to continue on to motivation. So I thought about this with my own children, and I was thinking about how we are either intrinsic motivated or extrinsic motivated. I will go through each of my 3 children and give some examples. And then after that, we are going to talk about some behavior management systems that you could try either at home, or sometimes these also occur in the classroom. And so when we think about my youngest daughter, she is very much extrinsic motivated, and she needs rewards, consequences, punishments, those types of things. Where on the other hand, like myself, I am intrinsic motivated because it's a personal satisfaction when I do really well at something or I set a goal. Whenever I have those wins of meeting my goals, I feel accomplished. So I don't necessarily need rewards to do that. I just have that desire to always do my best no matter what. So when we think about my daughter, on the other hand, she's not as motivated. So I'll give you an example. At school, they have to do iReady. She does not love this, especially when they take like the 2 hour long diagnostic. It is not her cup of tea. And so she will distract herself. She will not try 100%. She does put in her effort, but it's just long and she's just not into it. So within that, we did have to, as some say, bribe, but I would say to motivate her. And so we had explained to her if she tried her best throughout the 2 days of taking both the reading and the math assessment, and her score did improve, then she could pick out a small stuffy. And so once we did that, she went to school, tried her best, and then she did really well. So that's just one example for her. Following the rules, for example, excellent at school. At home, she always needs to know, but why? Or, what am I going to get out of this? So we have to go over where, we are a family here. Everyone has responsibilities. And at times, I have created some different point sheets for them to collect some money along the way. So again, in their mind, they're doing these things. They do get some kind of reward. And then on the other end of that, with that money, hopefully they can learn to management and understand how money actually works. And so that's kind of how she is. My middle child is a little bit of both. And so I would say normally in school, he's always trying his best no matter what. He's a people pleaser, as I am as well. And so he just always wants to do the right thing. He kind of, just goes along, does what's expected, doesn't really ever fight back or do anything like that, or question why we have rules. And so the only time that we've started noticing this is because he does not want to go to soccer. So again, in that situation, now we've had to do some different consequences. If you don't get your clothes on within 5 minutes, then we're going to have to do something to change that behavior. So, for example, he had his soccer game, didn't want to go. What we did after that, we went out to dinner, and I said, you know what? We can go home after you practice getting your cleats and your shoes and all that on within a few minutes. And so we timed him. Sure enough, he can do it, no problem, because he loves to be at home. He doesn't like to be out. So for his punishment, it was just going out to dinner and practicing getting his clothes on. And so, again, just thinking about some of us, we need a little bit of both. And then my oldest, as you know, he had a stroke, so his brain just works differently. He's neurodivergent. And so with him, we were having to connect new pathways for him so he can understand kind of the ways of the world. And so with him, we have done a lot of practice since he was, a toddler. And so we used to go to parks and things like that. Anywhere that was extremely loud, we would have severe tantrums. He does not like loud noises. We thought that was more of a sensory thing. But then once we kind of dug in a little deeper, we realized, it's the anticipation of something happening. And so in his mind, he thinks over and over and over and over, what's it going to be like when we go to this restaurant? I don't want to get there. What if it's too loud? What if there's too many people? And he's just thinking about it too much. Same thing, like if we were to take him to a baseball game for the first time, he was like, I don't know what to expect. He's crying, just overthinking about it. Once we actually get to those places, he's completely fine. So again, it's just that thought process. So we've had to kind of train him to how to make sure we have a clear schedule for the day. If there's any changes in between it, we have to let him know, talk about it. What is it going to look like when we're there? How are we going to be safe? Those types of things. And so now that he's older, we don't see any of those things. Now he just goes, everywhere. Sometimes he will need his headphones, but not really anymore. He loves going to Nuggets games and concerts and things like that. So it wasn't so much the loud sounds all the time, but again, anticipation of something new happening. It's kind of like that anxious coming out of him because he's just like, I don't know what's going to happen. So with him, he is also, I would say, more intrinsic motivated now, just because he understands and he does want to please everyone. He is a rule follower now. And so he is a little more intrinsic motivated. So with that being said, it's also important to think through the students in front of you, right? So we need to understand what motivates them, what does not. And again, we're not engaging in a battle between the student, right? Because again, we're just trying to figure out their behavior is some kind of form of communication. And so we do want them to grow, obviously, in their learning. So we have to kind of meet them in the middle. So with that being said, we are going to move on to behavior management systems that sometimes we need at home or at school. And so these are all research-based. And I'm going to start with the first one, which is point sheets. So sometimes in a school, once we've tried many interventions, a student's behavior is not changing how we want it to, or the teacher wants it to, we have to get a little more creative. And so point sheets are an awesome way to get students engaged in their learning so you're not in those battles. For example, I made one also at home just because I've been noticing my children, they do not like to make their bed. Or some of the chores, they don't, prefer them. And so now we have a chart that we have made where they actually are going to go through and highlight throughout the week. They can get up to 19 points. And so it's if they make their bed every day, they keep their room clean every day, they do the dishes once a week, they vacuum. We just added vacuuming into the list because, believe it or not very many children know how to vacuum. And so they will do that once a week. And then they will help with laundry 1 day a week. And so with all that, they will get their 19 points. If they get all their 19 points, then they're going to get their $5 that they've earned from their chores. And so within that, we're going to teach them how to keep their money. And then maybe, down the road, it's like, okay, some of that has to go back because you live here, or some of this needs to go to your savings. Here's a little bit you can spend. So just getting them to understand how money actually works, and it just doesn't appear on a card, which is what they kind of thought there for a while. And so point sheets are really great with that when you have those motivators that want rewards. As far as in a classroom, I've seen things where it's a great way to keep track of data. So when is the student having their outburst? Is it always in the morning? Okay, if it's always in the morning, that's really interesting because maybe they're just hungry, right? Maybe they just need to eat something and then they'll be good. Maybe it's always during recess time. So we can take a look at, okay, what's happening at recess time? Is there structure in place? And so it's also a way to keep track of data, to determine when are these things happening and how can we really support this student. If it's always in the same classroom, then that's always interesting. So say it's a middle schooler and they're always having a hard time just in this one class. So then we can get in, observe, try to figure out what's going on within that classroom. So we've talked about kind of assessing that, tracking the data. And then we also think about it's really great for students to create some smart short-term goals, right? So I'm going to stay in my seat for this class time. I'm going to raise my quiet hand, and I'm going to use kind words to my teachers and classmates. And it could just be those simple 3 things, and you can see on here with the smiley faces. So they would just need to get all 3 of those. There's also some where it's just for a middle school student, it could be like, oh, if you attend class, you get a point. If you do your work, you get a point. If you have kind actions, you get a point. So it can be very simple. A lot of teachers aren't always wanting to go with something like this because it does take time. However, if you give it that 4 to 6 weeks, you do usually see some positive outcomes. And if not, then we can kind of meet, talk about, okay, what is working, what's not, how can we help this student? It's also a lot of students just need that visual support, honestly. They're like, okay, I have to do these things, got it. So it's nice and organized in a way that makes sense to them. And then they're also able to self-monitor, which makes them more independent. So they have their sheets, they can take them class by class, get them signed, they do the circling, they can talk to the teacher, why did I get my smiley face or why did I not? So that they're very much aware. The last part about using these point sheets is a great way to communicate with families at home. So Parents also like to know how their day went, and if they're also trying to help build this partnership, it's really great to say, here, your student did really awesome here, but in this class, they were, shouting out the answer, or they were blurting out. They got up out of their seat a lot. So those types of things. And then families can talk to their student at home that night and say, tell me about your day. I heard this. Is that true? Let me hear your side. And so again, you're just working together to hopefully improve this behavior. And eventually, of course, the outcome is students will no longer need these point sheets, but it does take time. So with even my own children, maybe I'm like, okay, it's really hard for them to go to never making their bed to making it every day. So I need to rethink that and say, okay, you just need to make your bed 3 days for the next month. If you can do that, then you'll earn your $5 or whatever it is. And then from there, okay, awesome. You're making your bed those 3 days. Now let's see if we can do it Monday through Friday. Great. Let's try that for 2 months. Okay, once we do that, then we're like, every single day you should be able to do this. And you know what? You don't even need this $5 anymore. You can just do it. Let's think about some other area that we can work on now. And so you really do want to pull back those sheets eventually. And then the last point is just having a visual schedule for both at home and in the school. So a lot of students really need to see, just like my oldest, he needs to see that the routine is the same. If something has changed, to make sure that's clear on there. So say there is going to be an assembly that day. Show them the schedule, go through that schedule. Okay, but instead of science today, we will have this assembly. That's okay. We're going to have science tomorrow, and it'll be okay. And then just going over expectations of what it looks like in the assembly. But students need to know that they love a good routine. And so anytime there's a change, if you can be upfront with them to let them know, that usually will help with those behaviors. Because it's more of an anxious thing, just like my son, the anticipation of it. Like, what do I need to expect? Is it going to be loud in there? How long are we going to be in there? And they just start thinking about all these different things. So a visual schedule is very helpful. And then it also just helps reduce that anxiety, honestly. And so over the summer, I made one for my own children just so they knew their routine, so they could build that independence in the morning without me. So they knew they had to get dressed, they had to brush their teeth, they had to comb their hair, then they went and ate breakfast, then they needed to put their dishes away. And so it was just like, this is exactly what we're going to do. And then after that, then you can go play. All right, so that kind of sums up our behavior management systems. Please look at chalkitoutpodcast.com to see some of these. And